studio audience and joining us at home. Okay, so for some of you, you find out about them standing in line at the grocery store. For others, you find out about them at the nail or hair salon. So what am I talking about? The latest celebrity divorce. There's no shortage of breakups on the front pages of magazine covers. Even fame, fortune, and good looks can't stop these marriages from falling apart.
Well, a high-powered Hollywood couple is splitting up.
After 72 days of marriage, she announced that she was splitting.
Her 14-month marriage to Russell Brand is over.
They're calling me quits.
This was a shocker for everybody. Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher are getting a divorce.
She had apparently as many as 8 attorneys.
Jennifer Lopez and Mark Anthony are ending their 7-year marriage. Brand could be entitled to half of Perry's estimated $45 million worth. Did anyone see this coming?
First and foremost, I have to follow my heart.
I had such an identity in being Mrs. Parker and being a wife.
They're not going to be a couple anymore, and how to, raise 2 children when you're divorced, it's going to be complicated.
Even celebrities can't escape being human, but they can hire high-powered attorneys and settle for millions. But for most of us, divorce is not a front-page story. Instead, it is a very personal and hurtful experience. That's why my first guest found it necessary to not only take care of legal matters, but to also address the financial and emotional toll that a divorce can take. Please welcome board-certified family lawyer Trey Yates. Hello, Trey.
Good morning.
Very few people walk down the aisle thinking that they'll be headed for divorce someday.
Boy, isn't that the truth?
Yeah, and so and you find that out, and especially for you have kind of a niche group that you like to deal with, because it is usually those people who've been married for a while and have settled into married life, and then all of a sudden life changes.
That's true. That's true. And the Guide to Good Divorce came out of my years of experience since 1986, working with women mostly, 50 to 70, transitioning out of a long-term relationship, who find themselves what they believe to be at the end of something when really it's at the beginning of their next best life.
Yeah, and this is kind of a new take on, divorce. We oftentimes hear about the attorneys fighting against each other. Your whole point is you need to get what you need to get, but it doesn't have to be so adversarial.
Well, that's true, and we're blessed now in Texas because we have a new model called collaborative law, which allows the parties to be less adversarial and opt out of the court system. However, I always tell my clients we have to be prepared, or at least create the illusion like we're ready to play the full game to get the best settlement. So knowledge is power, Deborah. That's it. Knowledge is power. And the Guide to Good Divorce is talking about preventative measures as opposed to asking those important questions either financially or about who I am or what I want to be after the fact.
Yeah, finding yourself in crisis. All right, you say knowledge is power. It's amazing to me how many people don't know certain things until they get into that situation. And I think sometimes we put little blinders on. It's like, I don't want to know, because, and then we find ourselves in trouble.
Right.
One of the myths, for example, is oftentimes women will say, well, I'm the mother. I automatically get the children.
Not so. There is a very active fathers' rights movement in Texas, and rightfully so. A lot of young couples are co-parenting or sharing parenting responsibilities while they're together. So if you're the mother and you find yourself in the situation where your marriage is dissolving, don't just assume that you're going to be awarded custody, because especially in larger communities like Harris County, we have 9 family district judges. Each one of those judges has a different application of the law to the basic facts of your marriage.
Yeah, and the law as it goes in our state, because oftentimes we get things kind of mixed up. Like with California, we hear alimony all the time.
Right.
Alimony in Texas is a whole different girl.
We have a very anemic alimony statute, actually. We just revised it in 2011, so it's better now than it was before, but it's still what we call a needs-based statute. In other words, you got to prove that but for that money coming from him to you or you to him, okay, after divorce, you won't have enough money to meet your basic needs.
Yeah, and you said something interesting, you to him, because sometimes that's the case as well.
Exactly. Absolutely.
All right. The other thing is child support. What child support really means.
This is a real shocker.
Yeah, I get so many friends who still think they go, well, I can live off the child support. I was like, because that child support doesn't mean alimony. It doesn't mean a paycheck, really.
Right. The good thing about child support, it's the one debt or one obligation that you can go to jail for not paying. It's the only one. However, the way that the court will award child support to you as the custodial parent is based upon a statutory formula or a guideline, okay? And it only takes into account the first $7,500 that the person makes, and it's based on a percentage of that.
Yeah.
So you do the math.
Oftentimes not enough to live on.
But, well,
it's
hardly
just not
enough to buy tennis shoes.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And then the other thing too is you say, like you were saying earlier about asking questions too late. You have to ask these questions up front because, again, the assumption that, well, they're going to have to pay the child support or pay for my child's college, for example, or that's what we decide. And you talked about the age group that you're dealing with. Oftentimes in that age group, you have kids just getting ready to go off to college, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, who's going to pay for that?
Right, and the court does not have jurisdiction, by the way, to order a child support obligation or a payment past 18. So be aware of that. You want to ask questions. If you can contractually agree, that's why collaborative law, staying out of the courthouse, is a good thing. If you can collaboratively agree to have him or her make those child support obligations or those support obligations post-age, then you're doing better than you can.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the court can't.
But do it on the front end. Yeah, do it in the settlement. Okay, the other thing is, honey, you know, look, legal fees are going to just really mount up. Why don't we just get one lawyer to deal with it between us? We're not really contesting anything.
Yeah, warning, warning, warning. Yeah. Be very cautious if your spouse comes home and says, we'll share the same lawyer. First of all, it's unethical for a lawyer to represent two parties in a lawsuit. One lawyer can basically sort of drive and draft, but always get independent legal counsel. Yeah. You only get one shot at dividing up the money, okay? And if you have children, it's extremely important in terms of those agreements that you enter into because they can last for the child's minority, okay? So take responsibility, ask questions. If you have to put up a little money up front to hire independent legal counsel, it's money well spent.
Yeah, okay. You talked about this being a whole collaborative effort within your law firm. Debra Bruce is an executive coach, and Debra, this is such a vital thing that was missing, I think, for a lot of women.
Absolutely, and I got divorced many, many years ago, and I wish collaborative law had existed at that time because my husband and I wanted a friendly divorce. Mm-hmm. When you get two lawyers in who want to win, sometimes...
And emotions. I mean, it's the person that you thought you married sometimes is not the person you thought you married once the divorce word comes up and you start dividing things. Like, I want that plate. That's my plate. No, that's my plate. I mean, it really comes down to sometimes silly things, but it's about the emotional thing behind it.
And the other part of it is that in the collaborative process, there's actually training for lawyers to interact more in a collaborative way to get a good result.
Yeah.
For both parties.
So explain to us exactly what you do. By the way, you're having some seminars that are coming up. Right. We'll mention those in a second.
The Guide to Good Divorce.
Yeah.
Okay. March 31st at the Houstonian.
Yeah, which is a great atmosphere for people to ask questions, to share with each other. But the power in having someone like an executive coach like you is what? Tell us exactly what you do for these women.
What we really do is try to help people understand what they really want and how to get on with their life in this process, in the Guide to Good Divorce. What I'm working with women is to help them overcome that feeling of being less than or being damaged when you come through a divorce.
And
fear, all kinds of things like that, but recognizing their strengths and finding how to move forward and learning how to talk to yourself in the way that empowers you instead of making yourself feel like maybe you're the trash put out on the street.
Yeah, and we were talking before the break, or before the show started also, the power of taking ownership and realizing what you may have chosen so that you don't make that mistake again.
And knowing that you still have choices.
Yes. All right. When I talked about fear earlier, part of that fear is based on how am I going to take care of myself. And we also have with us Patricia Barrett, who is a financial analyst. And Patricia, again, that's an area where a lot of women are confused. And in this day and time, there are still women who didn't have control of the checkbook, so they don't really know what the budget looks like.
Yes, many women come to me and they feel totally helpless because the husband's always managed all the financial affairs. They may not even know where the assets are held. And of course, that's one time it's important for full disclosure, either through discovery process or in the collaborative process. They have to produce all the documents. Now, the women that I work with are often having unrealistic expectations about the support, like you mentioned. And it's so important for them to look at their budgets in a realistic manner and make sure that they are going to be equipped to meet their needs for the next 3, 5, even 20 years. I do spreadsheets.
Even if they say, like, well, I want the house.
Right. Oh, the house can be a big burden. You know, some assets actually can distribute money to you. Well, the house is one of those assets that you support We call it house poor.
Yeah.
In this financial planning world, if you have too much house and you just can't manage the payments, it can ruin a woman financially.
And then we hear community property, but there's also that backside that we don't like to hear, community debt.
Yes.
All right, and then let me round out with that whole thing of that's where a lot of times that women assets will come from, is from that community property. In Texas, we always say, oh yeah, split down 50-50. Not necessarily.
Not necessarily so. In fact, you want to advocate, if you have an opportunity, especially if you've been the inferior wage earner, to get more than 50%. So you want to work with a team of skilled professionals, both legal and financial, to make sure that you get the right percentages of the right numbers.
Which puts value on the person who said, I'm going to stay home and raise the kids and take care of the household. We're finally putting value on that.
We're finally putting value, and that's also finally being reflected in the statute with regard to contractual spousal maintenance or alimony.
But you have to have the right lawyer.
You got to have the right lawyer.
All right, Trey has a special offer. You can sign up for the Guide to Good Divorce seminar that we talked about and get $5 off the $25 fee. That means you're $20. You're just paying $20 for great advice from a team of experts, and you also get brunch.
You get brunch. And it's at the Houstonian.
And it's at the Houstonian. Okay, look, I'm happily married, but I'll pay 20 bucks and come on down. But no, this is great because it really can help. It can really help a lot of women. I think empower them to see other women in the same position that you all can kind of lean on each other's shoulders. The next seminar is Saturday, March 31st. It is from 8:30 a.m. to 2 in the afternoon. And again, it all happens at the Houstonian Hotel Club and Spa. You can sign up online at guidetogooddivorce.com, guidetogooddivorce.com, or you can call to reserve your spot. The number is 713-932-7177, 713-932-7177. We're also having on our Great Day Houston website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie.
Up next, something completely different. Now that spring is here, we want skin with that sun-kissed glow, but many of us don't really know